The word trigger is deeply misunderstood. These days, you hear it everywhere. Someone feels something intense and they say, "Oh, I'm triggered. They triggered me." That was such a huge trigger. But most of the time, they're not actually talking about a trigger. They're describing an emotion, a reaction, or maybe a moment when a boundary was crossed. And while all of that is valid, it's not what a trigger actually is. A trigger is not just a feeling or an emotion. It's not just being upset. And it's not even about what someone else did to you. A true trigger is something much more specific. It's when a present moment touches something unresolved from your past, and your nervous system responds as if it's happening again in the present moment. Hi, my name is Callie Sorensen. I have a master's in the psychology of coercive control, and I help people understand and resolve the deeper layers of trauma and reclaim their clarity, boundaries, and personal power. In this video, I'm going to break down triggers clearly, because when you actually understand what a trigger really is, you stop blaming, you stop reacting blindly, you stop mislabeling your emotions, and you start gaining the clarity to choose something different. So let's get into it. Before we can understand what a trigger is, we have to talk about what a trigger is not. Most people confuse emotions with triggers. Feeling angry, sad, scared, or uncomfortable, that doesn't automatically mean that you're being triggered. Sometimes what you're feeling is a completely valid response to what's actually happening right now. So for example, if somebody disrespects you and you feel anger, that's not a trigger. That's your boundary speaking. If someone lies to you and you feel hurt, that's not a trigger. That's your value of honesty being violated. Not every strong emotion is a trigger. And that's why it's important we don't just casually throw around the word trigger onto every emotional experience. Because when we do, we blur the line between a real trauma-based trigger and a normal human response to something that's uncomfortable or upsetting. And when that line gets blurred, we can actually avoid taking deeper responsibility. We might say, "That triggered me," when really what happened was just upsetting or disappointing, and our reaction fits the moment. So instead of getting curious about why we feel what we feel, we just slap the word trigger on it and move on. That's not self-awareness. That's bypassing the real work of understanding ourselves on a deeper level. Sometimes you're not being triggered. You're just feeling something real in the present moment. And that matters too. So now that we've cleared up what a trigger is not, let's talk about what a trigger actually is. So like we said, a trigger is not just any emotion. It's not being upset or having a bad day. It's not about somebody pushing your buttons. A trigger is an overreaction to the present moment, one that doesn't fully make sense unless you understand your past. It's when something someone says or does reminds your nervous system of something that was never resolved. And suddenly, the intensity of your reaction doesn't match the situation in front of you. That's the key. The emotional charge is disproportionate to what's actually happening in the present moment. It comes on fast. It feels overwhelming. You may even find yourself reacting in ways that surprise you or that feel familiar, but you don't know why. That's not just your present self responding. That's a wounded part of you, often a younger part, stepping in and trying to protect you. Because in that moment, your system believes this is happening again. This pain, this threat, this experience, it's happening again. Even if logically you know that it's not. So let me give you a real world example. We'll call her Sarah. Sarah was groomed and emotionally abused in her past by someone we'll call Mark. That experience was real. It was harmful. It left a mark on her nervous system in the past. So if Sarah sees Mark again today and has a strong emotional and physical reaction, that's actually not a trigger. That's her body remembering real trauma caused by a real person. Now, let's say Sarah meets somebody new. We'll call him David. David is kind. They've just met, but maybe David says something or his tone of voice or his body language just feels uncomfortably familiar to Sarah. Suddenly, Sarah feels unsafe. Her chest tightens. She wants to leave, but David hasn't done anything wrong. That is a trigger because David didn't hurt her, but her system is reacting as if he did. Her brain and body are connecting the present moment to something unresolved from the past. And that's what triggers do. They collapse time. They make it feel like the past is happening again right now. If Sarah doesn't realize what's happening, if she doesn't pause and recognize, wait, this feels like Mark, but I know David isn't him, then she's not consciously experiencing a trigger. She's just overwhelmed by emotion. But if she can recognize it, if she can pause and say, wait, this isn't about David. This is something from my past with Mark, and that's being stirred up. That's when it becomes a true trigger because now she's aware. And from that awareness, she has a choice. So here's the most important piece. If you're not conscious that this is happening, you're not being triggered. You're just reacting emotionally. To call something a trigger, you have to recognize this reaction isn't just about what happened right now. It's touching something old in me, something still unresolved. A trigger requires self-awareness. Without that awareness, it's just emotion, and it could be misplaced or projected onto someone or something else. The feeling might feel so real, and it might be valid, and it might even be useful because all emotions have wisdom, but that's not a trigger. And knowing the difference gives you power, because if you know it's a trigger, you can pause, you can reflect, and you can choose to respond differently in the present moment instead of unconsciously reacting from the past. So next, I want to go into your personal responsibility and the wisdom in triggers. Once you recognize that something is a trigger, you're not just naming a pattern, you're taking responsibility for it. And I want to be really clear here. Taking responsibility for your reaction in the present moment does not mean taking responsibility for what happened to you in the past. If someone harmed you in the past, emotionally, psychologically, physically, they are responsible for that. But if your reaction to a new person or a present situation is way bigger than the moment calls for, then you are responsible for how you choose to respond now. That's the difference. That's the power of knowing what a trigger really is. Because now you're not just reacting from pain, you're aware that the pain is still influencing how you show up today. And that awareness opens a door to choice. This is also where the wisdom in triggers starts to reveal itself. Triggers are not the enemy. They're messengers. They show you where something is still unresolved. They show you where your system is still trying to protect you from something it believes might be happening again. There's intelligence in that. There's survival logic in that. Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe, even if it's misreading the present moment. So when you say, I'm triggered, and I know this is about me, you're not blaming yourself. You're claiming insight. You're honoring the part of you that still needs care, context, and clarity. And here's the truth. You can't change a pattern that you're not aware of. But once you become aware and you see the trigger, you can interrupt it. You can respond instead of react. You can choose presence over projection. And every time you do, you truly learn and grow. So next, let's dive into the role of self-awareness and how to work with triggers. So what do you actually do with a trigger once you recognize it? This is where that self-awareness comes in, because you can't work with a trigger if you're not conscious that it's happening. Self-awareness is the foundation. This is the first and the most important step. And in this case, it means being able to recognize contrast, the contrast between a present moment emotional response and an overreaction rooted in the past. You start to notice things like, wow, this feels bigger than it should. My response doesn't really match what just happened. I felt this before, and it's not about this person or current situation. That contrast gives you space, and space gives you choice. Without self-awareness, all you can do is react. Your emotions take over, your past takes the wheel, and every reaction feels true, even if it's not accurate to the moment. But when you're aware of what's happening inside of you, you can still feel the emotion, but respond from your adult self, not your wounded self. And something like that looks like saying, hey, I'm sorry, I overreacted. That wasn't really about you. Something about that stirred something old in me, and I need a minute. That's what responsibility and accountability looks like in real time. It's not about shutting down your emotions. It's about owning where they came from. And even if you do react emotionally, even if you catch yourself after the fact, you still have an opportunity. You can apologize. You can reflect. You can repair that relationship. Because awareness isn't just about stopping all reactions, it's about creating the possibility of something different. And that's what healing, or rather growth, is really about. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming aware and conscious. So let's bring this all together. A trigger isn't just a big feeling. It's not discomfort. It's not someone making you feel a certain way. A trigger is a present moment overreaction rooted in your past. It only becomes a true trigger when you're conscious of it, when you know this isn't really about what's happening right now. And the moment you have that awareness, you have a choice. You can own it. You can respond differently. You can stop projecting your past pain onto your present. And that's the power in this work. It's not about perfection. It's not about never feeling triggered again. It's about recognizing when you are triggered and reclaiming the ability to choose how you move forward. Because triggers aren't here to shame you. They're here to show you what's still asking for your attention. So keep paying attention, keep practicing self-awareness, keep choosing self-responsibility and accountability, and keep coming back to yourself. So if this video shifted your understanding of triggers even just a little bit, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below and let me know what resonated most or if you have any questions. And if you know someone who's navigating their own triggers and emotional patterns, please send this to them. It might be the clarity they've been needing. And if you'd like support in learning from your emotions and triggers and building real self-awareness, I offer one-on-one sessions. You can book a free intro call using the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.